Okay, this slide number 64 is also very important. It's entitled Multiple Sources of Income. And it reads, as of 2020, according to the United States Secretary of Labor, 43% of Americans are now part-time or contract employees, and that figure is projected to grow. Okay, so right now with the pandemic and the fact that many people have quit their jobs because they don't want to get sick, or because of the extra unemployment checks, or because of the stimulus checks, and the fact that many companies, especially restaurants and travel and leisure-related businesses have shuttered their doors because of the pandemic, I suspect that this figure today, at the moment, is probably more than 50%. In other words, right now, I suspect that less than half of Americans, working Americans, have a full-time job. That would be my guess. Okay, and that more than half of working Americans today are, at the moment, are either working part-time or have become contract employees. And this is a big problem. This is a very big problem, okay? Because labor laws in the United States treat full-time employees very differently from part-time employees, okay? So if you're a full-time employee working for an organization that has a certain number of employees, I don't remember exactly the number, but it might be 100 employees or more. The employer is obligated to provide health benefits, health coverage for the employees, and maybe also dental and vision. Okay, and some companies, not too many, but some companies still provide pensions for their full-time employees. So that's kind of like being on the team. You're on the team, okay? However, if you're a part-time employee, the law does not stipulate that. If you're a part-time employee, companies are not required to provide health benefits, medical coverage, or dental coverage, or vision coverage. And if you're a part-time employee, you probably do not have access to a pension unless it's a public sector organization, like say a school district, city, county, state, or federal employment, and a few companies. I believe Starbucks and Costco do provide a pension plan for their part-time employees. But those are the only two companies I know that do that. Nobody else that I know does this for part-time employees, okay? And currently, I suspect that more than half of Americans are now part-time or contract employees, which means that maybe, possibly, more than half of Americans do not have employer-provided health coverage, nor dental, nor vision, nor pension. So this is a big problem. This is a very big problem. Because under socialist form of government, like, well, I have a master's degree in Latin American studies, and my specialization is Mexico. And I know more about Mexico than almost anybody in the United States. And a lot of times I know more about Mexico than people in Mexico do. Okay? But I know that Mexico is a kind of socialist country. Mexico had the first agrarian, socialist, quasi-communist revolution of the 1900s that exploded in 1910, lasted until 1921. And Mexico still has a very, very, very strong socialist tradition. So in the socialist countries, like Mexico, they provide universal education. So a college education, a master's degree, a doctoral degree in the public universities in Mexico will cost you less than $200 a year. The average in the United States is $17,000 a year, average. You're talking like UCLA, UC Irvine, you're talking $60,000 a year per year. Okay. Also in a socialist country like Mexico, they have universal medical care. So if you're a Mexican citizen or you happen to be in Mexico, your medical attention is practically free. Right? So you don't have to worry about that too much. And here in the United States, which is a capitalist system, I suspect that about maybe currently more than half of Americans do not have medical coverage provided by the employers, and which puts them at risk, puts people at risk, puts them at risk in terms of their health, puts them at risk in terms of their lives, and given that many people every year file for bankruptcy because of medical expenses, it puts their finances at risk as well. Okay, to say nothing about dental care or vision care. Okay, although to be fair though, once you hit 65, then you have access to Medicare, and then if you're still alive by 65, and then the picture change. Medicare doesn't cost a lot of money. Medicare is maybe $150 a month or so, right, for most Americans. So you have to wait till 65 in the United States to get Medicare, and then you're covered. But a lot of bad things happen to people between the time they're born and 65, including cancer and AIDS and COVID and many different things that could destroy their finances, to say nothing about their health and their lives. Okay, so this is the situation we're in, and you might say, well, what happened? You know, how come so many Americans are now part-time and contract employees, and how come so many Americans no longer have employer-provided medical benefits or dental or vision benefits? And I suspect that the answer is that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1989, I believe was the year, that signaled the demise or the decline of socialism on the planet. The collapse of the Soviet Union, well, of course, China's coming back. Communist China is making socialism a more interesting paradigm. Okay, but in 1989, I believe it was the year, Soviet Union collapsed, and socialism began to collapse throughout the world, including the United States. And with the collapse of the Soviet Union, we saw the ascendancy of capitalism. Capitalism has grown by bounds and leaps in most countries. I think that's kind of the background for what we're going through. Okay, but this is a big issue for about half of Americans at the moment. Okay, so if you're one of the, let's say 50% or less of Americans who have a full-time job and medical coverage, dental and vision coverage provided by an employer, you don't have to worry about this. Okay, but if you wanted to have 50% or more Americans who do not have a full-time job and do not have medical coverage or dental coverage or vision coverage provided by an employer, then you need to listen to the slide. Okay, and then part B of the slide asks you to explain how you can use the strategy of multiple sources of income to grow this, to address this growing trend. In other words, what if you cannot find a full-time job? What if you're one of those persons who are maybe half of the working population in the United States who cannot find a full-time job and does not have employer-provided medical coverage, nor vision nor dental? What are you going to do? Okay, because this is obviously not a good thing. Okay, so one of the ways to address this growing trend is the strategy of multiple sources of income, which means that if all you can find is a part-time job, then try to find 2 or 3 other part-time jobs. Some people, are doing that. They have 2 or 3 or more part-time jobs, right, to address this problem, this issue. I had a student who had 7 part-time jobs at 7 different restaurants, and she was working at 7 different. Wherever they gave her hours to work, she would take. Right. So eventually, she had 7 employers, which were 7 restaurants, where they would call her when they need her, you know, lunch, dinner, whatever, you know, washing dishes, cleaning the floors, whatever they opening the restaurant, whatever they needed, she would go into work, and as which is a kind of, it's an example of the strategy of multiple sources of income, and eventually she was able to save up about $25,000 in a few years. Okay. So this can work. This can work, and sometimes having more than one job might be better than having a full-time job. Of course, having a full-time job is very good because usually the pay is better and you get the medical coverage and dental and vision coverage, and you might have a pension. Not likely, but you might have a pension. The people who have pensions today are mostly in the public sector. Police officers, firemen, public school teachers, city, county, state, and federal employees. And a few companies have pensions, although probably many companies have pensions for the big mucky mucks, the people at the top, right? The presidents, the C-suite officers, the chief marketing officer, the chief finance, they probably have pensions. But most people, I think, the majority of Americans no longer have access to a pension. They have access to a 401k. We'll help you set up a 401k, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's where we are today. And I don't see this trend abating at the moment. Now, even if you are able to land a full-time job, you may still want to pick up a part-time employee or part-time business to protect yourself from the vicissitudes of life. Meaning that even if you have a full-time job, you might want to have a part-time job or a part-time business in case you lose your job, okay? Because if you have a full-time job and you lose it, then you're at zero. And usually you can apply for unemployment unless you quit. If you cannot, okay? They have to let you go, okay? So don't quit a job. There's no reason for you to quit a job. They let you go, you qualify for unemployment insurance. But unemployment insurance is really just enough money for you to survive. And it's only for 6 months. And it's only survival money for you to find your next job, because it usually takes about 6 months to find a job on average. Okay, that's what the literature indicates, that most people need about 6 months to find another job similar to the one that they lost. Okay, so if you have a full-time job, now you're hopefully, don't quit, don't quit, and hopefully you're on unemployment, but it's minimum survival money to get you to your next job. Okay. But if you have a full-time job and you have a part-time job as well, or maybe a part-time business, then you can use that part-time job or part-time business plus your unemployment to do better before you find your next job. Okay. And if you have 2 or 3 part-time jobs, you lose one, it's not such a big deal, right? Because you still have income coming in, and then you look for another one. Now, in some households, you might have 2 people, say 2 adults working full-time, or maybe one person is working full-time and the other one has 2 or 3 part-time jobs, or maybe both parties have 2 or 3 part-time jobs, right? So then you have multiple sources of income coming into your household. And if you happen to lose one of those sources, it's not such a big deal, and you go out to find another one, okay? So that's how the strategy works. And apparently, from my reading of the numbers, about half of Americans are now in this boat, okay? Meaning that they don't have a full-time job, they're part-time or contract employees, and you need to protect yourself by having multiple sources of income. Okay. Okie dokie. That's my student did, but she's a very talented person. Okay, next slide.